From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
I am John Peety, the Director of Literature at the NEA. I will read a brief statement to you that the Pavilion's presentations are being filmed for the Library of Congress's website and for their archives, so please be aware of this. And it is my pleasure to introduce the next reader, the poet Jane Hirshfield. And I want to say something about her work. I, as a reader, came to her through her anthology, Women in Praise of the Sacred, and I want to get the subtitle too, 43 Centuries of Spiritual Poetry by Women. And I think it says a lot about what you find in her work as a poet and as an artist, the collaborative sense, the sense of going through what preceded her and bringing organization to it and culling it. And I think that is a great gift to us as readers that will carry forward. And so as an anthologist, as a translator, and as a poet, she has been of great value to the world of letters. As representing the NEA, we are proud and honored that she is one of our fellows, a creative writing fellow. And of course, she has also had a Guggenheim and Rockefeller Foundation awards. And we, of course, have her books here at the festival, and then she'll be signing immediately afterwards here to the side. And so please, whether you have a book or you have a question that wasn't answered after the reading, please go and speak with her there. And I want to note, in addition to after, of course, she is the author of 6 books, and has been, I think, a remarkable voice. I want to quote from what the Washington Post has said about her, because I think it's quite precise. She has in her poetry, I think, a tradition in California, both in her case from the Buddhist tradition, but also a succinctness, whether that is from a beat or from other movements. And the Washington Post said of her, by paring down the moment to its essential elements and allowing ephemeral thoughts to be anchored within the tangible things of the world, Hirschfeld comes up with poems that brilliantly portray even mundane experiences as if they were nothing short of revelation. And I think it would be hard to improve upon that, and I think I would best serve her and you by giving the stage. Jane Hirshfield.
Well, it is an enormous pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank all of you for coming, and the Library of Congress, the NEA, the Washington Post, and all the supporters who make an event like this possible, but none of it would mean anything without you. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's a very good entrance to the first poem I'm going to read, because I would like to start with a poem which speaks to our own good luck in being here amidst a broader community of writers and poets who are often not as lucky, who might live in a place where there is no way to publish, who might live in a place where even if their work did find an audience, it perhaps was written in a language which isn't often translated, which we might never hear, who might live in a place where even access to paper and electricity and a desk are a privilege not always given. And so I had such poets in mind when I wrote this poem. It seems to me essential that we recognize how much their work means to us all, whether we see it or not. The poet. She is working now in a room not unlike this one, the one where I write or you read. Her table is covered with paper. The light of the lamp would be tempered by a shade where the bulb's single harshness might dissolve, but it is not. She has taken it off. Her poems, I will never know them, though they are the ones I most need. Even the alphabet she writes in, I cannot decipher. Her chair, Let us imagine whether it is leather or canvas, vinyl or wicker. Let her have a chair, her shadeless lamp, the table. Let one or two she loves be in the next room. Let the door be closed, the sleeping ones healthy. Let her have time and silence, enough paper to make mistakes and go on. This next poem began as a poem that I never know whether to call it a love poem or an end of love poem. It is both those things. But poems often go on to strange fates in the world. And 2 years ago, when I was sent with a small contingent of American writers through the Middle East to 4 or 5 countries, much to my surprise, this was chosen as a poem to print up as a beautiful letterpress broadside and be given to the various people like the Grand Mufti of Syria and the Minister of Education of Jordan. And so suddenly this love poem and end of love poem became a diplomatic poem. For what binds us. There are names for what binds us. Strong forces, weak forces. Look around, you can see them. The skin that forms in a half-empty cup, nails rusting into the places they join, joints dovetailed on their own weight. The way things stay so solidly, wherever they've been set down, and gravity, scientists say, is weak. And see how the flesh grows back across a wound with a great vehemence, more strong than the simple, untested surface before. There's a name for it on horses when it comes back darker and raised. Proud flesh. As all flesh is proud of its wounds, wears them as honors given out after battle, small triumphs pinned to the chest. And when two people have loved each other, see how it is like a scar between their bodies, stronger, darker, and proud. How the black cord makes of them a single fabric that nothing can tear or mend. Our life with other creatures in the world also matters to me a great deal. So for the third poem, I thought I would bring in one about that essential companionship and sharing of the earth. 3 foxes by the edge of the field at twilight. One ran, her nose to the ground, a rusty shadow, neither hunting nor playing. One stood, sat, lay down, stood again. One never moved, except to turn her head a little as we walked. Finally, we drew too close, and they vanished. The woods took them back as if they had never been. I wish I had thought to put my face to the grass. But we kept walking, speaking as strangers do when becoming friends. There is more and more I tell no one, strangers nor loves. This slips into the heart without hurry, as if it had never been. And yet, among the trees, something has changed. Something looks back from the trees and knows me for who I am. So I'm going to give you 3 poems now about permeability. This is a rather permeable situation. We have lots of things on the periphery that waft through the tent with us. And yet I think that the only way to get through a life is by being totally permeable to all of it and not only accepting it, but finding some way to welcome it. This is one of the great struggles of my own life, probably the central task of it. And I think I will give you one poem not by me, a poem I translated by a Japanese woman poet who wrote 1,000 years ago, which, when I translated this poem, it was for me the quintessential statement and altered my life to have met it. So the poet is Izumi Shikibu. She wrote in the year 1000 in present-day Kyoto, then called Heian-kyo. And what she said was this. It's a 5-line poem. Although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. So, you know, houses in poetry are often figures for the self in a Jungian sense. The moonlight can be the fullness of anything. It can be love, it can be beauty, it can be always the moon itself. It can also be Buddhist awakening, a state of awareness. And so what she is saying is, if your house is walled up so tight that no cold winds can get in, neither will the moonlight. So, although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. Okay, so now back to me. The Envoy. One day in that room, a small rat. 2 days later, a snake, who, seeing me enter, whipped the long stripe of his body under the bed, then curled like a docile house pet. I don't know how either came or left. Later, the flashlight found nothing. For a year I watched as something, terror, happiness, grief, entered and then left my body, not knowing how it came in, not knowing how it went out. It hung where words could not reach it. It slept where light could not go. Its scent was neither snake nor rat, neither sensualist nor ascetic. There are openings in our lives of which we know nothing. Through them, the belled herds travel at will, long-legged and thirsty, covered with foreign dust. A cedary fragrance. Even now, decades after, I wash my face with cold water, not for discipline, nor memory, nor the icy awakening slap, but to practice choosing to make the unwanted wanted. So this next poem is one which for a long time I didn't read. And then there came a couple of years where, I don't know, some rather large number of people kept coming up to me and telling me stories about how at a very difficult time in their life they had turned to this poem and that it had helped them. And so I thought maybe I ought to start reading it again. It has a reference to Greek mythology in it, but you don't need to know the poem. I just tell you that so you know what part of terrain you're in for the title.